Click links for Odysee and BitChute. So this is about the Sliders reboot from Torme. I saw a few episodes last night. It was good for a low-budget 90s show, but the guy is out of his mind if he thinks it. He says he's going to try to bring it back, but it won't get woke. No, sir. Some people just do not understand how toxic and vile left-wing Twitter really is. If you're not on Twitter, then you just don't understand it. It's a mob of reactionary teenagers and I'll say diminished capacity adults. Twitter is like 80% left-wing useful idiots. Someone saying a show won't get woke doesn't understand the way of the world Bolshevik post-2020 America. Welcome to year one of this new world order. If you want to see it, you can find it online at soaptoday.2. The thing is, the show was woke, even when I watch it now and I see the cucking and degeneracy. But it was just sort of naively woke for the 90s. The 90s was a whole different vibe. It had a intertribal cucking, kissing scene that was, I guarantee you, written by a smarmy, coke-sniffing, jerk-off, douchebag, Hollywood pervert type. But the shocking thing was, it had an episode where the communists were portrayed as the bad guys. Probably because Mel Torme, the guy's dad, came from Eastern Europe. He was born in 1925, so he probably knew how bad communism was. So he probably instilled that into his kid, the fear of communism. Back then, it was Russian communists, and nowadays, or Bolsheviks. Nowadays, it would have to be Chinese communists. But that is what a normal person thinks. There is not a snowball's chance in hell of communists being the bad guys in any modern show. They would slide into a parallel Earth, and it's kind of like a Doctor Who it's like there's a lot of shows from the 80s and 90s that are all kind of the same, low budget, off, like they're not on the main ABC type networks. They're like these lower budget, and they're fine, but they're all kind of like loosely Doctor Who ripoffs. They would go into a parallel Earth, and the Axis powers would have won. It would be absolutely insufferable. I swear to God, until people wake up to the they live world that we live in, this cancer is going to continue. It's They Lives on BitChute if you want to go watch it and start thinking, and activating your almonds. If they did the show now, Trump and Kushner would be elected for life. I don't know why they fear Trump so much. He's owned and controlled by the same scumbag bankers that control every president. But walls would have his portrait on them, like the Kim family in North Korea. It would be insane, and I guarantee that the show would see the introduction of a plucky, breastless Pox BLT, which nowadays would be probably a trans kid who's trying to escape Jared Kushner using Zur as a catamite. Some people don't understand where we are now. Megan Fox did a talk show the other night, and she said people were cheering Trump at some wrestling event, which is true. It was probably, writer wing crowd. That is a woman who doesn't understand how low IQ Twitter really is. Children on Twitter and literally sub-90 IQ adults who will destroy lives because they don't care, or because the future is not really real to them. Stone Toss had a tweet. They said that art can't thrive in the censorious environment of the left's political correctness. Everything he tweets pisses the left off. Of course, a few useful idiot commie kids jumped in to parrot their Marxist talking points about what their degenerate professors brainwashed into them regarding everything is marginalized and oppressed or whatever. But the funny thing is, the left forces people together and then says that all the things that you used to do are now haram. Being inclusive means not for you, only for them. You must adjust to them, not vice versa. Obviously, the goal all along has been control and manipulation. Because when you look at the people behind it, it gives the game away. They literally look evil. I'll say reptile people. If I say any more than that, YouTube will give me a Wikipedia warning on the top of the video, like I got on the last video. It also gets into the concept of why the left can't meme, or how PC comedy fails so hard that it morphs from stand-up into just a spoken word echo chamber confirmation bias San Francisco circle jerk. The only thing the left can do is ban, censor, and deplatform, because they're totalitarians who have ideas so reprehensible that they need force to accomplish them. Bolshevism is so great, they need razor wire and armed guards to keep you inside. In Cuba, they're fighting to be free from communism. CNN seems to ignore that, and they say they're fighting about something else. It's as if the people who run the mainstream media are actually evil people whose only goal is to destroy America. Yeah, I only say that because it's true. When the left tries to meme, it's such a freaking mess of like 6-point font. It makes you wonder if they're trying to prove the opposite. A left-winger posted a meme. It was a bunch of angry feminists holding rainbow flags titled Some New Thing, and the next panel was what they imagined the right-wing response would be: a blonde girl standing peacefully in a field of wheat. Except people look at it and they say, yeah, angry single cat lady feminists screeching about some nonsense. That's actually pretty lame. They'd be happier if they were married with a family, living on a farm. Maybe feminism is cancer. Hey, who was behind feminism? What are some of those people's names? What's the Frankfurt School in cultural Marxism? Who was Margaret Sanger? What's the deal with the Federal Reserve? And why do people in the comments keep saying audit the Fed? What does all that mean? Maybe we should look into it. I don't know. You know, it's funny. If you look at the past few decades of who was influencing and funding and bringing liberty devices and things used to deconstruct buildings into South Africa to change the situation there, which they did. They changed the situation for the worse, and now it's a shithole. They actually fled the country. It's a fascinating history of people going in, setting the conditions to destroy something, and then leaving. It's bizarro world. Everything these globalists touch, they destroy. Oh, and by the by, I saw a mainstream MSN video on YouTube. They said Cuba was about the Wu flu, not communism. They have absolutely no shame because sociopaths don't really know what that means. And as for South Africa going up in flames, well, they don't have a way to spin that, or Haiti, so they just kind of skip over it and focus on some silly distraction. Oh, like UFO. Really? Because it's probably just a Chinese drone. You know, it's probably a stealth drone. Didn't you think that's like about 1 trillion times? I don't know how many orders of magnitude I can go, but don't you think it's more likely that it's just a Chinese or Russian or American drone testing out new stealth technology? Isn't that like the new optical camouflage that measures the incoming photons and gives you bends light? Isn't it like something more pragmatic, more likely than a UFO? You know, the speed of light is still a problem for transport. Anyway, it's crazy, but it's as if the media was the enemy this whole time. Anyway, so Sliders says that it's not going to get woke. Again, he's Mel Torme's kid. Says it's not going to get woke. But it's cool that the concept is at least being discussed, because the useful idiots will jump in and then they'll deny the concept of woke even being like a thing or like whatever. And then people will start giving examples of it. A few normies will get red-pilled, and a shitlord will get his wings. Left-wing kids do that. They jump into something, then they deny something. Then when somebody posts literal proof, they call them a German for posting facts. They were raised in this weird environment where they never had the religion of Marxism challenged. They just blindly accept things as a matter of faith because my professor told me. Well, is it possible your professor was wrong? And it's mostly the school's fault. They seem to skip the part about how there are two sides to every story and always examine the source for bias. Most importantly, they forget the concept of, if you don't know the counter-argument, then you don't really know your own. But in the modern political environment, that concept is impossible. The teacher would get fired for mentioning it. What the school board teaches must be accepted as holy writ. Schools aren't teaching kids today. They are indoctrinating them. Look who's in control of the school boards and the school unions. When I was in school, the scientists were always careful to teach you how to think, not what to think. Anything was on the table. Always look for bias. That is all gone now. Schools are run by ideologues who are no better than witch doctors. Don't even get me started about climatology. You can look at their predictions over the past 100 years if you want to laugh your ass off. Science, yes, is impartial, but scientists are not. They know who funds them, and they know which way the wind is blowing. Teachers get fired if they tell kids to think for themselves. The counter to this is we have social media to challenge the religion of Marxism. Of course, they can't allow that. They want no free thought. They want to end anonymous social media, which means that they will have achieved total control. I hope they do it. The normie will finally realize that he is a slave. Anonymous speech is free speech. That terrifies them because they have bad ideas that are easily refuted. If you go against the media narrative, then you'll be fired, evicted. Your banks will close your accounts. In the UK, they'll arrest you. Shouldn't you have the right to express political speech without being fired? Doesn't that seem obvious that if you don't, that will move politics to the far extreme left with all the horrors of communism, millions and millions starved? Isn't speech so valuable that all viewpoints must be protected? Because otherwise, like, who are you appointing your master and you the slave to say what you may or may not listen to? Essentially, that's what it comes down to, is someone is a master and someone is a slave, and the master is the gatekeeper. Biden wants a list of the social media people that the protesters followed. And it's funny, I mentioned protesters, and even though the protests have been going on for, the past 12 years very violently, we all know what protests I'm referring to. That's when you know you're living in clown world. Well, Biden doesn't want a list of those 1-6 protesters, but Liar Wormtongue, his executive counsel, does. Hey, doesn't that have a chilling effect on free speech? Yeah, that's the goal. They don't want you following free thinkers. They want you afraid. What's next? Your service provider will publish what sites you visit to get you fired and attacked by the Twitter mob? Yeah, probably. Anyway, that's just crazy talk. A year later, well, we're doing it for your own safety. But wasn't it crazy talk a year ago? Shut up, bigot. Anyone who visits the wrong websites too often will find that their banks, credit card companies just close their accounts. Oh, yeah, that part's actually happening. Yes, see Wells Fargo, Chase, and Bank of America. Netflix has all kinds of shows. What if they report that you didn't watch the woke shows and they report that to the mob, or that you started to watch it and you clicked off after a few minutes? That's a wrong thinker there, comrade. The more people talk about the woke issue, cultural Marxism, the better. And I'll say it's like a volcanic eruption. It's just pressure that keeps building up until it's inevitable, and you're going to get a Krakatoa response. The environmental landscape is so effed up now. Even by 2015, they had to reboot Star Wars because globalists cannot create a new woke universe that sells. They just take an already existing IP that a normie created, like Lucas, then they change everything. They want to attract the customers based on old IP name recognition, but they want to fill it with propaganda. So people were starting to wake up to this cancer before the Wu flu came along and put a kibosh on things. So Slider says, Torme says it won't be woke or it won't come back. Then it just won't come back. Not on any mainstream network. You wouldn't even get any actors to work on it because they'd just be too scared. In this environment, you're not going to have a non-woke show. The industry would shut down first. Stuff that was allowed 20 years ago would have Twitter losing their minds now. Go VPN surf the torrents of It's Always Sunny. In the first few episodes, Mac was dating a trans person. All those jokes wouldn't make it past the network filters now. The Twitter kids would contact the advertisers who would pull out of the show, so the show would stop the trans jokes. But then they don't stop there because now they know they have a lever. They would just keep pressuring them. What's the show about? They're portraying alcoholics doing crazy things. Well, alcoholics and the mentally ill are disenfranchised, marginalized, and oppressed indigenous colors, so they must be stopped. You get the idea. Once they have control, they use it. The show cannot continue in this woke environment, and it doesn't. It totally sucks now. It's painful to watch them bend over for Marxism. But as long as the show makes money, they're not going to walk away from it until it starts being a loss. And oh yeah, we want to bring some old show back, get the nostalgia viewer, except that everyone is going to be a POC lesbian. They don't really understand why people are not on board with propaganda. They literally think they know what is good for you, which is funny because they're like the most filthy Epstein-Weinstein degenerates on earth, but they know what's good for you. The next step is to remove anonymity, to force you to not complain. You will watch Disney Star Wars and you will freaking love it, or we will send the mob after you. I mean, you have cell phones now with the front-facing camera and tablets that can track your eye movement to see if you're looking away from the screen. It's like only a matter of, that's just crazy talk. Is it really crazy talk? Let's start with, is it possible? Yes. Are we dealing with filthy, filthy, evil people? Yes. Okay. Imagine South Park coming out today. The ADL would just burn them down. Social media is giving a huge group of dumb people or kids who don't have the maturity to know what they're doing the ability to run the country. If social media had periodic IQ tests, then we'd be fine. You could have the dumb people locked in their own social media environment so they couldn't F things up for the rest of us. Sort of a brave new world approach of alphas, betas, gammas. If you were on Twitter, you know that like 80% of the users are to the left of the bell curve, and I know that blows the curve, but not really, because dumb users post more. They're the ones virtue signaling and posting how anti-fascist they are when they don't even know what those words mean. When they're not being non-binary otherkin. These are just like fat young people who need attention and need to go on a diet. And like, if they went on a diet, they got some exercise, just simply ate less, and started getting laid, all this stuff would, like, they wouldn't have time for Twitter anymore. They just wouldn't care. Every once in a while, they come to Gab, but they can't really get people banned on Gab, so they have to rely on the strength of their argument, which they have no experience with, and they're totally screwed up because everything to them is just reliance on emotion. So no, you're not going to see any non-Marxist shows, or I should say not any, I mean, like Fast and Furious, what was that about, car racing or something? All right, fair enough, you can get stuff like that. But anything it has to deal with topical issues, there's no way it's not going to be anti-European. The shows won't all be insufferable, but they will be missing the spark that shows used to have pre-2020. And, it's not even like this show was that great. It was just a very mediocre, fun, light show. But go back. You can go watch the first 1 and 2 episodes. And you look at it and you go, oh yeah, they couldn't do that now. Oh yeah, they can't do this now. And it's not even like you can't do things, but you go, this is an opportunity to put propaganda in. I guarantee you they're going to take it, or the show's just not going to go ahead. It's just as simple as that. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys. I'll see you on Odysee, chute, Gab, and whatever else comes along.